Sometimes one wonders if Sri Aurobindo could make it simple. But the fact is that what he has written is something very simple. Only he has given a complete picture. And that is the difference between our mortal way of seeing things and the divine's way of seeing things. When we see a cat, a four-footed animal. When Sri Aurobindo sees a cat, he says, what he is seeing, he recounts in one of his poems, the miracle of the four-footed Brahman. Whether she is a spirit, a woman, or a cat, this is the mystery I am wondering at. It's not imagination, it's a reality he is seeing. And what he is seeing, what is the miracle? The miracle is the omnipotent, omniscient Brahman. He becomes a helpless, four-footed creature. It's a great miracle. At one place, Sri Aurobindo says, God could afford to be weak because he is almighty. Only the Almighty can play this kind of a game where he becomes apparently helpless. So, when Sri Aurobindo is describing Usha, the dawn, the day when Satyavan must die, he is not starting us with a date and telling us, look, this is the story and the Satyavan is going to die this day straight away. He is inviting us rather to a deeper and completer vision. We see dawn every day. We see the common light of earthly day. But when the Lord sees the dawn, he sees the coming of Usha, the goddess, who brings plenitude and life and joy back to our hearts. Somewhere we experience it. It's interesting that when we wake up in the morning, unless we are going through difficult times, very difficult times, we find that much of our anxieties of the night were as if dissolved and melted. And once again there is a renewed joy of life. It has that kind of effect. This is a complete vision. He could have simply introduced Savitri by saying, Savitri, daughter of Ashwapati, came riding her chariot into the Madra halls. He doesn't say that. He describes her as the omniscient goddess leaning across the breadths. He describes her from the very beginning. Who is she? This is the divine vision. When the mother saw Sri Aurobindo for the first time, she did not see the way we see, oh, a freedom fighter who has come from British India to French India. She saw in him, he whom we saw yesterday is here upon earth. And his presence is enough to prove that a day will come when all this darkness will be transformed into light. This is a complete vision. What did Sri Aurobindo see when he saw the mother? Someone asked him. Sri Aurobindo has not recorded it. Sri Aurobindo said, for the first time I saw. Look at the difference. When people saw French lady coming all the way to India, somebody must have seen a great yogin, a mystic, an accomplished artist. What does the Lord see? He says, for the first time I saw embodiment of complete surrender down to the very physical cells. And therefore I knew that the time has come for the life divine to manifest. So Sri Aurobindo is not indulging in any kind of poetic imagination. He is just presenting things as he saw. When he saw the mother, he saw the divine mother taking a human birth for a work which she has been engaged in since the time began. And therefore the story too in the fitness of things start from that point. In our Indian mythologies, we have the idea of 10 avatars of Vishnu. The idea of avatar is good, but this belongs only to the present cycle, 4 cycles. There are many cycles before. The mother at one place speaks about when first time man came into being and how she remembered that she was here and how life was very close to perfection because mind had not yet come. She even points out her fingers that saying it was somewhere towards the southern and eastern side of India. Maybe Java or Sumatra, we don't know, somewhere towards that. She points out, she has that memory. She has been working right from the day time began and from the very first dawn of creation. And what is this labor she is engaged in? We are too much concerned about our humanness. We want the divine to come and somehow help us, as simple as that. But what is our real problem and what is the real help? The real problem is that we are as if entrapped in a whole cage of matter. In the next canto, Aurobindo will speak about this world and he'll say something to this effect, that this world is like a jail. It keeps the soul prisoner. And this is because our whole seeing is conditioned by matter. The moment we take a plunge into the earth, these trappings come and everything is looked through these. Like somebody, when the ophthalmologists check the eyes, they put all kinds of shields and tell us, now you see, how do you see? And one eye is totally shielded, so you can see nothing. So the moment we come inside this trap, material entrapment, our whole vision changes. People have realized it. And they have offered a solution that, okay, get rid of this entrapment and come out of it. That is not really a solution. That is throwing away the problem. A summary dismissal of the problem. In Savitri, much later, death would tell Savitri, when it tests her from steps to steps, she says, there are 2 snares that I have set for human soul. And you have avoided both. Then it says you have the complete knowledge. The first snare is the snare of forms. We are too much carried away by appearances and the form. Everything is conditioned by that. Somebody looks good, he is good. Somebody speaks well, he is great. Somebody outer behavior is very sweet, he must be inwardly a saint. This is the snare of forms. Despite even someone much lesser of a yogi, like Shakespeare telling us that appearances are deceptive, still we are ensnared by form. But there is another snare which a spiritual aspirant is likely to get trapped into, and death talks about it to Savitri, the snare of the contempt of forms. In the Ishopanishad, this is described as Vidya Avidya. And those who are trapped by avidya, they fall into a darkness. Those who are trapped by vidya alone, they fall into a greater darkness. Both are snares. Snare of the form and snare of the contempt of form. And that is why in Aurobindo's vision, we find all the time the two together. It's literally, he is living and breathing that great truth of the Upanishad, Ishopanishad. Vidyancha, Vidyancha, yes, Tadvedo Bhayam Saha, to hold them together. We see it all through. Even Savitri later on says, heaven's touch fulfills, but cancels not our earth. And here again we say, while introducing Savitri, while introducing the physical dawn, simultaneously there is a juxtaposition of 2 truths together. Ambassadress twixt eternity and change. This is how he is actually introducing subsequently Savitri. He will lead us to her. But this is her introduction. What a royal introduction, worthy of a great avatar. We have in our dramas introduction of the hero, and we introduce him with the shoes or with the dress. And here is Aurobindo introducing us the great one from the very depths. Who is she? Ambassadress twixt eternity and change. None else but an incarnation of the Divine Mother, of whom Aurobindo has this to say: it is the mother's power. It is she who mediates between the human aspiration and the response of the Supreme. She is the mediatrix. So she is the ambassadress twixt eternity and change. She comes from the eternal. She enters into this world of change. When Mother was asked, "You created the worlds, how did you do it?" She said, "Very simple." What can be more simple than this? When the Divine willed that so should it be, He created, the first thing that came out of that was knowledge and the power to effectuate. I am that knowledge and power. I had all the knowledge how to do it and the power. So he is describing her as ambassadress twixt eternity and change. The omniscient goddess leaned across the breadths. She knows all things. That wrap the fated journeyings of the stars, and saw the spaces ready for her feet. The inconscient drowse has made this earth ready now for the great event. It's very interesting that just I think today or yesterday I was reading a report in one of the papers which says the earth took about tens of million years to cool down to a point where the great drama of creation could begin. So it had to be made ready. Once she half looked behind for her veiled son, then thoughtful went to her immortal work. Earth felt the imperishable's passage close. The waking ear of nature heard her steps, and wideness turned to her its limitless sky eye, and scattered on sealed depths her luminous smile. The first touch of the Divine, bringing out the very first forms of life on earth, how harmonious and beautiful earth is in its most primeval stage. Then as life evolves, as mind evolves, something tortuous begins to come up. That Aurobindo will not speak about here. He'll speak about much later. Why it happened this way? Because there is no reason why creation could not have grown harmoniously. After all, if we go back still to nature in her first touch, there is a joy in it, there is a perfection in it, there is a beauty. One can almost feel a sacred presence. It takes really one, even if one doesn't believe that there is God, one just goes and sits in the midst of nature, and one has that great sense of the presence, the joy, so naturally, so spontaneously. Come back to the animal world, it's there, but a little veiled. And come back to the human jungle, and you wonder, is God really there? It's so strange why this happens, and Aurobindo speaks about it much later in Savitri itself. At an appropriate time he will tell us. But right now it's the first touch, and all nature wakes up earth is wide. It's very beautiful. In the ancient times, the feminine aspect was compared to earth. She is wide. Sky is also wide and the earth is also wide. Sky indifferently supports. Earth holds upon her breast all the forms, gives birth to things. All kinds of creatures it shelters. Even those whom we would call ugly and dread and repel, she would still shelter somewhere within her. That is the kind of wideness of the earth. And Aurobindo is using such a beautiful word. And wideness turned to her its limitless eye, and scattered on sealed depths her luminous smile. And what that smile does in the heart of atom? Kindle to fire the silence of the worlds. In one of her prayers, the mother says, living within the heart of each atom, I kindle therein the fire that never burns out. It is not an image, it's a reality. Aurobindo speaks about the electron, and he says, in that minute spark, Shiva in his fiery chariot rides. What a difference of vision. We don't even see an electron, but we are told there is something like an electron. When the Lord sees, he sees Shiva riding in his fiery chariot. All things at their bottom are spiritual. Even what we call as water and air and earth are in their bottom spiritual. And one can go to this extent without the least exaggeration, that we can understand nothing till we understand God. And that is why there is a very beautiful line in one of the Upanishads, that Yasmin Vigyate Vigyati Sarvam. Knowing that, one knows everything. Not knowing that, we are in the state which is Aurobindo describes in Savitri, kingdoms of greater knowledge. He says, he talks about they knew everything, they knew every line, curve, meaning of all the symbols. At the end he says, but all their knowledge was covered with a knot. By knowing too much, they missed the one thing to be known, and the transcendent kept his secrecy. But there is another way of knowing the deepest truth and knowing everything else from that. And here is that knowing that is welling out in Aurobindo's words, kindle to fire the silence of the worlds. Who has lit up this fire in the breast of earth? This insatiable fire. This fire that Jat Vedas, which starts from matter and would not stop its journey. It is still creating forms after forms after forms after forms, so that one day we will have a form which will be the perfect abode of the Lord. That's what is the journey of the fire. That fire has been lit in the heart of the earth. In the God's Labor, Aurobindo speaks about that fire in another way. The undying suns here burn. What he is trying to create here? A bed for the golden river song, a home for the deathless fire. I have been digging deep and long mid a horror of filth and mire. A home for a bed for the golden river song, a home for the deathless fire. So that fire she lights, and as it is lit, a great Vishwa Yagna starts. All grew a consecration and a rite. What yagna we do? We have all these traditions. We have yagna, and you have those, fire, and then you do gritham. What a yagna the divine does. The entire universe becomes his Vedi. Out of the universe, he makes earth as his Vedi. And he lights up which fire? Not the mortal fire, but the immortal's fire in the very heart of this Yagyavedi. And all nature is offered into it as Samidha. And he himself presides over the yajna, and he himself receives it above in his higher self. We see that Vishwa Yajna through and through in the mother's prayers and meditations. It's nothing else but the Vishwa Yajna done for man. And here she says, all grew a consecration and a rite. What is a rite and a ritual? It's not an external act, it's a way of being. And what is that way of being? Now Aurobindo will tell us. Air was a vibrant link between earth and heaven. The wide-winged hymn of a great priestly wind arose and failed upon the altar hills. The high boughs prayed in a revealing sky. This is a little poem of Aurobindo, a tree. And how does he describe the tree? A tree beside the sandy river beach, holding to the skies its topmost boughs, like fingers to the heaven they cannot reach. This is the soul of man, his body and brain, hungry for earth, his heavenly flight detain. How does the mother feel a tree? She sits by the side of the cherry blossom tree and feels the sap going up to look for absent light. And she says, this is the yajna going on inside. This is the aspiration of the tree. She says, love in stones manifests as the power that holds the atoms together. How does love manifest in plants? She says, by the urge to move towards light. Put a plant anywhere, it will twist its branches and move towards light. When someone wrote to Aurobindo about these 4 lines and said it's not really required, it's kind of superfluous lines. He said, I don't know about that, but I have had this experience several times in Gujarat, elsewhere, and while looking out of my window in Pondicherry. I saw it. He was not using a poetic image. It's not an image. Every morning, nature picks up everything that Usha reveals and lifts it to the Lord. Sri Krishna speaks about it. He says, by the yajna I have created the worlds. By yajna I hold it together. By yajna I carry it on the great march. What is that yajna? And in our real life, we can see the practical implication. Precisely because it's a yajna, therefore there is a knot of oneness in everything. Everything is linked to everything else. And it's because we forget that all life and nature is yajna. That's why we suffer. Because we think everything is for my separate individual ego or the group ego's purpose. And that creates suffering. Because we forget there is a yajna. Everything is put together in the great cauldron or the fire, if we like, and lifted up. And everything receives from the one according to each one's receptivity. Some receive material gifts, others receive the inner delight, depending on what we are open to and we receive. This is the great yajna in which each one offers. And it's a very real thing happening in material nature. We'll read these lines again. And scattered on sealed depths, her luminous smile kindled to fire the silence of the worlds. All grew a consecration and a rite. Air was a vibrant link between earth and heaven. The wind gods actually carrying the offering right up to the heavens. Arose and failed the wide-winged hymn of a great priestly wind. Arose and failed upon the altar hills. The high boughs prayed in a revealing sky. And every time we see the service tree, we remember this yajna. It offered itself that I want to provide shade to the Lord. That's the yajna. And it stands there for decades. And how, if we could participate in that kind of yajna, what a beautiful thing it would be. But then, Sri Aurobindo always reconnects us to where we are. He would not let us be lost in that. So he tells us, here where our half-lit ignorance skirts the gulfs, on the dumb bosom of the ambiguous earth. What an expression. Earth beautiful, earth dangerous, earth charming and fascinating, earth terrible. The same earth which helps us feel the soothing breeze in summer, which wipes our sweat, is the same earth which sends a tsunami and a giant storm which demolishes everything. Ambiguous earth. And yet something is here which is very sacred, very divine. Right from the time earth was formed, she is there and she has never left it. And he'll come to that. Here where one knows not even the step in front. The most perfect description of ourselves. And sometimes we think Sri Aurobindo didn't know about us. Then this one line is enough to tell us he knew very well all that we are. He didn't need to be told in great detail. Here where one knows not even the step in front. And truth has her throne on the shadowy back of doubt. Everything seems, oh yes, that's how it is. Perfect. And after a few days, is it really like that? How many times we as human beings experience it? Yes, God is there. So beautiful. Is God really there? How many times as human beings we experience, and the Lord knows this human nature so thoroughly. And truth has her throne on the shadowy back of doubt. On this anguished and precarious field of toil, outspread beneath some large, indifferent gaze, impartial witness of our joy and bale, our prostrate soil bore the awakening ray. This is the wonderful thing that Sri Aurobindo brings in. People have spoken about God, and there are great traditions, even spiritual traditions, which speak about God as impersonal. And here he is saying, yes, all this drama is supported on the breast of a huge and vast impersonality, indifferent witness, impartial witness of our joy and bale. There is that impersonal aspect of the divine. But beyond the personal and the impersonal, there is something else, something that comes from the very land of the sun and descends into this earth. And here, amidst our ignorance, lights up the fire, lights up hope, lights up joy, and that is the divine presence in matter. When Sri Aurobindo speaks about the divine, he is not speaking about some impersonal Brahman. And there is that status. He speaks about it. He said that is a passage. When we touch that aspect of the divine, we are liberated from many things. We suddenly discover a base and a support. But we should not stop there. Beyond the impersonal is the supreme and infinite personality of the divine beloved, whose smile becomes the fire of the worlds. Impartial witness of our joy and bale, our prostrate soil bore the awakening ray. Here too the vision and prophetic gleam lit into miracles, common, meaningless shapes. This, of course, we all have seen and we all see how mother's touch changed ordinary mortals into immortal beings. What this place would have been, even if you see materially, who has built this wonderful home in which Aurobindo and the mother came and they stayed on. Who would have known when those hands were laboring to make this building that one day this place which I am building for God knows what purpose will become the home of a wonderful truth, of a beauty celestial, a place of the great change. Who would have imagined? And thus was it be. How her presence changes everything into a miracle. All of us, by her touch, change into something very different. And it's not because of any human effort or anything special about any human being. It is just her touch which changes all who gathered around her into such a wonder, such a marvel that we talk about their stories and still feel there is so much more to talk about. All because of her touch. Who was Hanuman but yet another monkey? And how the touch of the divine changes even Pashan Shila, the dead matter, stone, rock, into a goddess. This is the story of Ahilya, who has become a stone. And when Rama puts his feet, she changes into a goddess. And the story has a very interesting offshoot, that when the boatman has to take him across, he says, I won't let you sit in my boat till you wash your feet. He says, why? What's wrong with my feet? He says, I know what's wrong with your feet. You touch material things with your feet, and they turn into God knows what, goddesses and living beings. I have only one boat to ply people across. If this turns into a woman, I would be miserable. I already have one at home. I can't manage her with this one boat. So he says, what do you want? He says, I will wash your feet, then only I'll let you in. It's a very beautiful, touching story about bhakti. How the divine touch changes everything into a miracle. Lit into miracles, common, meaningless shapes. And then comes another aspect of the divine Leela, which we find so difficult to understand, yet which is necessary in the totality of things. Then the divine afflatus, spent, withdrew, unwanted, fading from the mortal's range. Those words are so perfect. He is not using the word that it just goes back somewhere. He says withdraws from the mortal range. Why does he withdraw from the mortal range? Because he is unwanted. We want someone who can satisfy our longings, our desires, justify all our bottomless follies. But divine would not do that. He says, I am going to liberate you from the desire itself. No, sir, please. We want a divine who can satisfy our desires. They make us happy. When we get a desire fulfilled, we are so happy. Yes, I know that. And for long you have played this game. But I have come to free you from the clutch of desire. No, sir, please don't say that. If desires are gone, we will be dead. No, you will have eternal life. And the debate goes on. So unwanted, he withdraws from the mortal's range. He doesn't go away. He withdraws from the mortal's range. But even that is an action, because nothing the divine does is without its effect. What happens when he withdraws? His sacred yearning lingered in its trace, the worship of a presence and a power too perfect to be held by death-bound hearts, the prescience of a marvelous birth to come. When Aurobindo speaks about 4 great events, it's very interesting that all 4 great events have either a destruction or a withdrawal in it. He speaks about the siege of Troy, which is a great war, a gory war extending over 10 years. A whole city is brought down, which was the epitome of strength and vitality. The entire youth of Greece die in that battle. Aurobindo says it was a great event. And why? He speaks about the sense of beauty, all that which developed after that. Then he speaks about another great event, the crucifixion of Christ. Again, a great departure. And yet, what that departure fulfills for us? It humanizes our animal-like humanity. After all, humanity must be animal-like to have done this to anyone, and to him who was the very embodiment of love. What more love there can be who could say that forgive them? And yet, what humanity gives? Crucifixion. Yet the presence of that love conquers by its death. It is victorious on the cross. And how? It humanizes by that shock that something within human hearts feel. Oh, what have I done? How could I do it? Something ripples inside the human race, and a great change takes place. Third, of course, in the order of Aurobindo's aphorism, it's 4th, but we can take it as 3rd. In the midst of the battlefield of Kurukshetra, another great war, a great colloquy takes place. It's amazing that the lesson of immortality was given in the midst of death. Only God can do this. Gita speaks about the immortal within the mortal. It speaks about how the deathless being in us carries on its journey. It speaks about the divine. It speaks about Sharo Bhava, Akshara. It speaks about Purushottama. Where is it speaking all this? In the midst of the most, a playfield of death. If there was a playfield, this was the playfield of death. If anyone asked, who is the stage manager, event manager of this great Kurukshetra? Death would have said, I, sir, can't you see? And Krishna has some other story to say. He says, that's just my event manager. Even this is stage managed by me. I am there behind this. And what is its effect? Paradoxical effect. It speaks about, Aurobindo says, it will yet liberate humanity. God enjoys with these paradoxes. And then he speaks about the 3rd great event. Now the 4th, Krishna's exile from Vrindavan. The gopis and the gop, the keepers of light, that's what they were. They are. They clutched to him with their heart's longing. But when Krishna goes, who is born? Radha in their hearts, because that consciousness alone can support this departure. The consciousness of surrender. The consciousness that yes, he is there within us. I think the mother has spoken about it somewhere, that in times to come, my children will love me much more. She has foreseen, not because of any credit of the children, because it's her action. When she withdraws from the mortal range, when she is there within the mortal range, we take her for granted. So many stories which one finds very strange that she is distributing medals and there is a long queue, and someone feels, oh, it's a long queue, I'll come later. Goes to the bazaar. By the time he comes back, mother has already finished the distribution and gone back. So in the evening he comes and lays a claim, mother, I didn't receive the medal. No, it was only at that time that you had to come. She had told this, that she wanted at that time. Who else but Krishna was sitting in a lap handing over the medals. One can't imagine that. How could we? I mean, it's not that person, it's us. How could one do it? Divine is there, and countless such things when she is physically present. But when she is not, a sacred yearning lingers. We yearn to have a glimpse of that glory. She says in one of the, it's there in 12 years, how she says that, I have made myself so easily available to you. You know, even the gods and the sages have to do tapasya for 1,000 years to have a glimpse of mine. And of course the child's beautiful reply, that mother, we live under the shelter of the great Vat Vraksh, so we don't know what it means to yearn and aspire. So even the divine's so-called departure, it's not a departure, it's a withdrawal. And what it leaves in its trace is sacred yearning, lingered in its trace, the worship of a presence and a power too perfect to be held by death-bound hearts. And then one line summarizes it, the prescience of a marvelous birth to come. What happens? Divine has come, played a leela and gone away. Is it over? No, it's not over. What she has said, this is the kind of being who will one day come upon earth. One day, it will not be like this, that here is she and here are we. But one day, we will know ourselves to be part and parcel of her. Something of that love which she manifested would awaken within our hearts. Something of that light and glory and truth that she brought to earth will awaken in the human mind. Something of that power and strength which she brought into the mortal sphere will become our share. For such is the law and such is the way. We'll take a pause, continue it.